I need you to stop what you are doing. Yes, you. Because what I'm about to tell you will change the way you see your favorite restaurant forever. In the heart of Lagos, a woman with no family money, no powerful connections, no husband, no children, no investors, built one of the most talked about food spots in the entire city from absolutely nothing. Just a roadside buka, a giant black pot, and a secret she guarded for over 10 years. A secret she didn't keep in a diary, she put it in the food. In the jollof rice you swore was the best you'd ever tasted. In the aroma that made you close your eyes before the first bite. In the plates you recommended to friends. In the meals you drove through Lagos traffic for on a random Tuesday. And when I reveal what that secret was, and I will reveal everything before this story ends, you're going to remember the last time you ate somewhere you couldn't explain why you loved so much. That pull, that craving, that strange loyalty. It wasn't just hunger. Before we go any further, hit the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me your favorite Lagos restaurant. Because after this story, you might never look at it the same way again. This is the story of Mammaresi, the woman Lagos called a legend, and the woman journalist Sandra Okafo called something far more dangerous. Stay with me. There is a particular kind of woman that Lagos produces quietly and without announcement. Not the loud kind of successful woman, not the woman in the Range Rover and the big lace at Owambe's, not the woman whose husband's name opens doors for her, not the woman with the verified Instagram page and the motivational captions about grinding. Lagos produces those too in abundance. You cannot miss them. But there is another kind, a quieter kind, a woman who simply appears one day, already working, already focused, already 3 steps ahead of you, and by the time you notice her, she has already built something you cannot ignore. Mammaresi was that kind of woman. Her real name was Abiodun Aderinsola Fashola. She was from Abeokuta originally, a Yoruba woman with a Yoruba name nobody outside her hometown used, because by the time she arrived in Lagos in 2009, at the age of 27, she had already decided that the person she used to be was not going to be useful for the life she intended to build. She had no children, never wanted them, she told the few people she ever spoke to honestly. She had been married briefly, 23 months, the kind of marriage that ends not with a dramatic fight, but with a quiet and mutual acknowledgement that 2 people had made a mistake. And after it ended, she packed one bag, took the small settlement money her ex-husband gave her more out of guilt than generosity, boarded a bus at Ojota Park, and arrived in Lagos with enough money to rent a single room in Bariga and nothing else. No plan, no connection, no family in the city. Just a woman and her hunger. What she could do, the one thing she had always been able to do since she was a girl watching her grandmother cook in an Abeokuta compound, was cook. Not well, not just well. She could cook the way some people sing or paint or tell stories, naturally, instinctively, with a precision that didn't come from training but from something deeper and harder to name. She understood food the way a mechanic understands an engine. She could taste a dish and break it down in her head, layer by layer, until she found what was missing. She knew how heat behaved, how time changed flavor, how smoke worked differently on different kinds of rice. She knew things about pepper that pepper sellers didn't know. She started the buka in 2010. Not in Bariga where she lived. She was smart enough to know that Bariga was not the right market. She had spent her first year in Lagos moving around, eating at different bukas in different neighborhoods, studying not just what people ate, but how they ate, who paid without hesitation, who asked for price before ordering, who came every day versus who came once, who brought colleagues versus who came alone. She chose Surulere, specifically a spot on Adeniro Ogunsanya Street, where the foot traffic was dense, and the mix of office workers, market people, students from the nearby polytechnic and residents gave her the kind of varied, volume customer base that a food business needed to survive its early years. She started with one pot, a single burner on concrete blocks, a wooden cable she found and repaired, 6 plastic plates she bought at the Tejuosho market. She cooked jollof rice and one protein, goat, most days, because she had learned that in Surulere, people respected goat meat in a way they didn't quite respect chicken. The first week, she sold to 11 people. The second week, those 11 people came back and brought people. By the end of the first month, she had a waiting crowd by noon every day. By the third month, she had moved the operation to a proper shop space, a small one, but real walls, real roof, a door she could lock. She put no sign outside. People asked why. She said, if the food is good, you will find it. They found it. What made the food different? People tried to explain it and failed consistently. Food bloggers who visited wrote long, elaborate reviews full of technical language about smoke profiles and pepper ratios and the Maillard reaction, and all of it was true, and none of it was sufficient. Regular customers who had been coming for years would try to recommend the buka to someone and end up frustrated by the inadequacy of language. They would say eventually, "You just have to go. I cannot explain it. Just go." The most common description, used by such a wide range of people that it stopped feeling like coincidence and started feeling like data. People said they felt attached to the food, attached to the place, like there was something pulling them back that was not simply taste memory or habit or convenience. One woman, a corporate lawyer who ate at the buka every Friday without fail for 3 years, once told a friend, "I live in Lagos. I drive 40 minutes in Lagos traffic every Friday to eat there. I have asked myself why. I don't have a good answer." A man who ran a logistics company nearby said, "I've eaten at restaurants on the island that charge 10 times the price. Some of them are objectively better, but I always come back here. Something about this place has my name on it. Something about this place has my name on it." That phrase that years later, when the truth finally came out, people kept coming back to, because it turned out to be more accurate than the man who said it could possibly have known. Mammaresi herself was a presence that the buka seemed built around rather than built by. She was tall for a Yoruba woman, almost 5'10", with a commanding, upright posture that made her look taller still. She was lean rather than full-figured, with long arms and large, capable hands that moved through a kitchen with a fluency that was almost beautiful to watch. Her face was angular, sharp-boned, the kind of face that photographs well and ages even better. Her skin was very dark and very smooth. She always wore the same style, plain dark Ankara wrapper, white or cream blouse, her hair wrapped tight. No jewelry except 2 small gold earrings she had worn so long they seemed part of her face. No perfume that you could detect over the smell of her cooking. She was courteous with customers without being warm. She smiled, not frequently, but when she did, it changed her face completely, went all the way to her eyes, made people feel unexpectedly chosen. She remembered names, she remembered orders. She did not remember details about people's lives or ask personal questions, and customers sensed early that she would not be offering any personal information in return. She was in every visible way a private person doing a public business. She had no close friendships in Lagos that anyone could identify. She went home alone every evening. She had no man in her life, or if she had, he was as invisible as she was. She went to church on Sundays, an older Pentecostal church in Surulere, not one of the big flashy ones, sat in the middle rows, left when service ended, did not join any fellowship group or women's committee. She was completely, deliberately self-contained. And every morning, before anyone arrived, she was at the buka, alone, with her black bag, with her pot, with her ritual. Though nobody knew about the ritual yet. That would come later. The business grew in a straight line upward, without drama, without setback, without the kind of near-death crisis that Lagos food businesses usually survive at least once on the road to success. By 2014, she had 4 tables and 2 apprentices. By 2016, she had expanded into the adjacent shop and started doing weekend catering. Small events first, then medium ones. Then by 2018, corporate events in Victoria Island and Ikoyi, where she arrived with her team and her pots and cooked on site, and the clients told their colleagues, and the colleagues called her, and the bookings filled months ahead. By 2019, she had saved enough, and she began to plan the restaurant. Not a buka upgrade restaurant, not the kind of place that is still essentially a buka but with nicer chairs. A proper restaurant, a statement, the kind of place that told everyone who walked in, this woman is serious, this woman has arrived, this woman is not going back to Adenera or Gonsoya Street ever again. She found a space on Awololo Road in Ikoyi. She signed a lease. She hired an architect, a young woman from Yaba who had just returned from a design program in London and who understood exactly what Mammaresi wanted. She hired a contractor. She supervised every stage of construction herself, arriving at the site before the workers and leaving after them. The restaurant opened in January 2021. It was called simply Risi. One word, no explanation, printed in clean white letters on a black signboard that ran the full width of the entrance. Inside, exposed concrete walls, warm wooden furniture, low pendant lighting, open kitchen where customers could watch the cooking happen. 40 covers, a short menu, deliberately short because Mammaresi understood that a restaurant that tried to be everything to everyone was a restaurant that was nothing to anyone. She served 3 things: the jollof rice, a pepper soup, and a small selection of grilled proteins. That was all. The prices were not buka prices. They were not buka upgrade prices. They were the prices of a proper restaurant in Ikoyi, priced for the clientele of Ikoyi. Expats, senior government officials, the new Lagos money that wore it quietly and ate well. And they came. Within 2 months of opening, Risi had a waiting list for weekend reservations. Within 6 months, it had been written about in 3 Nigerian publications, 1 Pan-African food magazine, and had been mentioned in a Bloomberg piece about Lagos's emerging fine dining scene. A UK-based Nigerian journalist who visited for a family event in Lagos ate there and put it in a Guardian article about the Nigerian diaspora and food identity. Mammaresi was photographed for the cover of a Lagos lifestyle magazine, the first and only time she agreed to media. She wore her usual dark Ankara. She did not smile in the photos. The headline called her the quiet revolutionary of Lagos food. She was, by any measure, one of the most successful self-made food entrepreneurs in the city. She was worth, people estimated, well over 100 million naira. And still, nobody knew how. Not really, not the whole answer. The food was exceptional. Her work ethic was undeniable. Her business instincts were sharp. All true. But there had been 100 women with exceptional food and sharp instincts and brutal work ethic who had tried to build something in this city and failed, or plateaued, or barely survived. The road from a single pot in Surulere to a restaurant on Awolowo Road in Ikoyi was not one that good cooking alone had ever been enough to walk. Something else had carried her. Something in the pot. Something she brought to the pot every single morning in a small black bag. And it was going to take a journalist named Sandra Okafo to finally make Lagos look directly at what that something was. Sandra Okafo had a rule she had followed since her first year in journalism. The rule was simple. If a success story cannot be fully explained by the visible facts, keep looking. The explanation exists, you just haven't found it yet. She had applied this rule to a fake school in Aja and found fraud. She had applied it to a miracle church in Ojota and found a Ponzi scheme. She had applied it to a pharmacist in Ojuelegba and found counterfeit medication. When she applied it to Mammaresi, she found something she had not expected. But that came later. First, she had to notice. Sandra was 33 years old, Igbo, from Enugu State originally, raised in Festac town where her parents had lived since before she was born. She was medium height, compact, the kind of woman who moved quickly and noticed everything and gave the impression, which was accurate, that her brain was always running slightly ahead of whatever conversation she was currently in. She worked for Lagos Verified, a mid-sized investigative online platform that had built a strong reputation in 3 years for breaking stories the big outlets avoided. It was not a glamorous job. It paid moderately, but it was hers in the way that only a job that fits a person's precise nature can belong to them. Her editor, a tired, brilliant man named Emeka, who had been in Nigerian journalism for 22 years and had the bloodshot eyes to prove it, described Sandra in her annual review as our best investigator and our most difficult personality. Both of these things are connected. She had first eaten at Mammaresi's Ikoyi restaurant in the spring of 2022. She had gone because a source she was meeting had suggested it. The source worked in banking and ate there regularly. She had paid attention to her surroundings the way she always did. She had noticed the caliber of the clientele. Not people who ate at nice places because they wanted to be seen, but people who ate at nice places because they actually ate well. People with real money who valued real food. She had ordered the jollof rice. She remembered the moment it arrived at the table. The color, the smell, and then the first taste, which produced in her something she did not know how to categorize. Something that was not quite pleasure and not quite discomfort, but lived in the space between them. A deep, almost physical pull, like the food was doing something to her beyond feeding her. She dismissed it. She was hungry. It was good food. She was tired from a difficult week. These things make you feel things about meals that the meal itself hasn't earned. She went back 2 weeks later. Not because she planned to. She found herself in Ikoyi for a different meeting and realized she had rerouted herself towards Awolowo Road and was pulling into the restaurant's small parking area before she had consciously decided. She sat down, she ordered the rice again, she felt it again. That pull, that strange, settled, anchored feeling, like something in the food was specifically, personally reaching for her. She drove home afterwards and sat in her apartment in Surulere for a long time. Then she opened a new document on her laptop and typed at the top, Risi Restaurant Questions. And she began to write down everything she had noticed. The investigation did not begin as an investigation. It began as curiosity. Sandra following a thread the way she followed all threads, without knowing where it would go, simply because something felt loose and she could not leave loose things alone. She started with the public record, business registration, property records for the Ikoyi space, any legal documents she could find. She found a clean, properly registered business. No lawsuits, no regulatory violations, no complaints to any consumer protection body. This was not unusual. It just told her the visible layer was undisturbed. She talked to former customers. She found people who had been eating at Mammaresi's food since the Surulere buka days. She found a pattern almost immediately. Customers who described their relationship with the food using language that, if you stripped away the context, sounded less like food reviews and more like descriptions of dependency. I couldn't stop going back. I didn't even want to go back, but I went. Something about it had my name on it. I don't know how to explain it. She talked to food industry people, caterers, restaurateurs, chefs who knew the Lagos food scene. She asked them casually what they made of Mammaresi's success. Almost universally, they admired it. Several of them were slightly puzzled by the scale and speed of it. One woman who ran a respected catering business in Lagos and had been doing so for 15 years said something that Sandra wrote down word for word. Listen, the food is good. It is genuinely good. I have eaten there. But good food in this city, good food alone, does not build what she has built at the speed she built it. I am not saying anything. I am just saying. I am just saying. Sandra noted that phrase too. She visited the restaurant 4 more times over the following weeks, always at different hours. She studied Mammaresi whenever she appeared in the dining area, which she did, briefly, at the start of each service, moving through the space with the contained authority of someone who was surveying something she owned completely. She noted the relationship between Mammaresi and her staff. Professional, clean, no obvious tension, no excessive warmth. She noted the kitchen. It was an open kitchen, visible from the dining area through a wide glass panel, a design choice that was meant to communicate confidence and transparency. You could watch the cooking happen. Sandra watched. She came early one day and watched from outside through the large front windows before the restaurant opened. She saw Mammaresi arrive at 6:15 in the morning. She saw her go into the kitchen, set things up, begin her prep. And then, just before the cooking properly started, she saw a moment, a small, specific, deliberate moment. Mammaresi brought out a small black bag from somewhere near her station. She reached into it. She held something over the main cooking vessel. Her lips moved, and whatever she was saying it quietly, consistently, with the rhythm of something memorized long ago. Her eyes were half closed. Her posture was completely relaxed, not the posture of someone doing something that felt wrong, the posture of doing something that felt like routine, like prayer, like breathing. After 40 seconds, she lowered her hand. She put whatever she was holding back in the bag, and the bag went away, and she cooked. Sandra watched this happen 3 mornings in a row. The 3rd morning, she got back to her car and sat very still. Then she called her editor. "Emeka, I need to go undercover." He sighed. "Where?" "Risi restaurant." A pause. "The Koi place? The jollof rice place?" "Yes." "Sandra, that woman has been profiled in The Guardian. Why would—" "I don't know yet," Sandra said, "but something is not right. I need to be inside to know what it is." Another long pause. Then, "How long?" "Give me 3 weeks." He gave her 2.5. She applied for the position of floor staff, waitress specifically. She had made herself a CV that was technically true, but strategically incomplete. It listed hospitality work she had genuinely done during university, a short stint at a restaurant in Yaba years ago, and described her as someone returning to hospitality work after a period doing freelance administrative jobs. She had also done something she was not entirely proud of. She had called in a favor with a woman who knew one of Mammaresi's senior staff to ensure her application made it past the first filter. She was called for an interview. Mammaresi conducted it herself. They sat across from each other at one of the restaurant's wooden tables before service began, the morning light coming through the large front windows. Mammaresi had a printed copy of Sandra's CV on the table, but she did not look at it during the interview. She looked at Sandra. She asked direct questions, not the standard interview questions, not "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" or "What are your strengths?" She asked, "Why do you want this specifically?" She asked, "What do you notice when you walk into a restaurant?" She asked, "Have you ever eaten here before?" Sandra said yes, she had eaten there twice. She said the food was extraordinary, and the experience had made her want to be part of something that clearly meant something to its owner. Mammaresi studied her for a moment. Then she said, "You are not a typical candidate." "No," Sandra agreed, holding her gaze, "but I will work harder than anyone you have hired." A long silence. "Come Monday," Mammaresi said. The first week, she did exactly what she had promised. She worked hard, she learned fast, she made herself quietly indispensable. She was always on time, she was always focused. She made no errors. She asked sensible questions about the menu, the service standards, the wine list, and no questions about anything else. She watched everything. She confirmed the morning ritual from the inside. Every morning before service, Mammaresi was in the kitchen alone for the first 30 to 45 minutes. The kitchen staff arrived at 7. She arrived at 6:15. Sandra began arriving at 6:45, earlier than required, using the excuse of restocking the service station, which let her move near the kitchen entrance. She could see through the pass-through window. She watched the black bag come out. She watched the ritual. She tried different angles to see what Mammaresi was holding during those moments. From the left, she could see the shape, very small. From straight on, she could see that it was soft, that it had a particular drape, a lightness, the way fabric hangs when it has barely any structure. From the right, on one morning, she caught a glimpse of color. Red lace. She caught her breath. She moved away from the window before Mammaresi looked up. She stood in the corridor and thought for a moment. Red lace, small, soft, delicate, held over the pot every morning while the woman's lips moved. She had seen enough. She needed one more thing. The camera was small enough to sit in the decorative succulent that Sandra had, on her third day of work, offered to bring from home to brighten up the service corridor. A suggestion Mammaresi's restaurant manager had approved with a smile because it was the kind of invested employee gesture that managers like. The plant sat on a small shelf that had a direct sight line into the kitchen through the pass-through window. Sandra ordered the camera from a supplier in Computer Village and tested it for 3 days at home. Image quality, more than adequate. Battery, 6 hours. She planted it on a Tuesday evening before leaving, angled precisely. Tuesday morning, she watched the feed on her phone from the car park across the road from the restaurant. Mammaresi arrived at 6:14. She moved through the kitchen setup with her usual efficiency. Gas checked, first stock pot started, prep boards out, tomatoes and peppers brought from the cold room. Then she went to the shelf near her station and brought down the black bag. She opened it. She reached inside, and she brought out a G-string, small, red lace, clearly worn. She held it between 2 fingers with the casual familiarity of someone handling something she handled every morning without thinking about it. The way you pick up your phone or your keys, not looking at it because you already know what it is and where it is. She held it over the pot. Her lips moved. Whatever she was saying it quietly, consistently, with the rhythm of something memorized long ago. Her eyes were half closed. Her posture was completely relaxed. Not the posture of someone doing something that felt wrong. The posture of doing something that felt like routine, like prayer, like breathing. After 40 seconds, she lowered her hand. She put whatever she was holding back in the bag, and the bag went away, and she cooked. Sandra watched this happen 3 mornings in a row. The third morning, she got back to her car and sat very still. Then she called her editor. Emeka, I have it. Give me 1 week to set up the exposure, then we run everything simultaneously. His reply came back in 2 minutes. The exposure was planned. The week between finding the evidence and using it was the most uncomfortable week of Sandra's professional life. Not because she doubted what she had seen. The footage was clear. Her photographs, taken the following morning when she found an opportunity to look directly into the black bag while Mammaresi was in the dry store, were clear. Multiple G-strings, small, worn, stored together in a bundle secured with a rubber band. The evidence was solid. What made the week uncomfortable was the awareness of what she was carrying alone. She served food to customers every shift and watched them eat and watched their faces do the thing that all of Mammaresi's customers' faces did. That settling, that visible sigh of something releasing, that look of a person who has been given exactly what they needed. And she thought about what was in the food. She watched them pay without hesitation, tip generously, make reservations before leaving. She watched a man on a date hold his girlfriend's hand across the table and say something that made her laugh, the meal making everything warmer around them. She watched a group of women celebrating a birthday fill the room with noise and joy. She wondered sometimes that week if she was doing the right thing. Not about exposing Mammaresi, she had no doubt about that. What the woman was doing was a violation of her customers' bodies, of their autonomy, of their right to know what they were consuming. The success built on it was a fraud, however extraordinary the food beneath the fraud might be. There was no version of this story where Mammaresi was not accountable. What she wondered about was the people who would be collateral, the staff who had built their livelihoods here and done nothing wrong, the customers who would have to process what they had been eating, the damage that could not be controlled once the story was out. She thought about it. She talked to Emeka about it. He listened and then said, with the directness of a man who had spent 22 years making these calls, "Sandra, she is putting her used underwear in people's food without their knowledge as a spiritual practice to manipulate their minds and keep them coming back. The people in that restaurant have a right to know. Full stop. The story runs." She already knew that. She just needed to hear it said plainly. The story would run. But Sandra had decided something about how it would run. She would not publish and disappear. She would not file the story from a distance behind a screen where Mammaresi could deny it or contextualize it or issue a statement through a lawyer and control the narrative. She wanted to be in the room. She wanted the exposure to happen where the deception had happened, inside the restaurant, in front of the customers who deserved to know, with no distance between the truth and the people it belonged to. She wanted Mammaresi to hear it with her own ears, in her own restaurant, surrounded by the people she had been deceiving. She would do it on a Saturday evening. Saturday evening at Risi was the height of the week. Full reservation list, every 40 covers taken, a waiting list for walk-ins, the kind of service where the room reached a particular pitch of energy, conversation overlapping, the kitchen visible and active through the glass panel, the smell rolling through the space and making everyone feel that being here tonight was the right choice. The kind of night where a woman might feel briefly that everything she had built was solid and permanent and hers. She planned carefully. She told no one on staff. She arranged for her cousin to be seated as a regular customer at a table near the center of the room, booked 2 weeks in advance under her cousin's girlfriend's name. Her cousin would film everything on his phone from a natural position. She sent the footage and photographs to Emeka the Wednesday before with a full written account, with the instruction that Lagos Verified would publish the complete story the moment she sent the signal from inside the restaurant. She had also quietly forwarded the evidence to the Lagos State Consumer Protection Council and the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control. Not because she expected rapid government response. This was Nigeria. Rapid government response was not something you planned around, but because the record needed to exist. The official complaint needed to be filed, and she wanted no one to be able to say afterward that the exposure was irresponsible journalism with no regulatory pathway attached. She was thorough. She was always thorough. By Friday evening, everything was in place. She drove home, ate the meal she had cooked for herself, and sat on her balcony for a long time looking at the Lagos night. The generator sounds, the distant traffic, the low orange glow of the city that never fully went dark. She thought about Mammaresi, about a 27-year-old woman arriving in Lagos with one bag and enough money to survive briefly and enough hunger to do something about it. She thought about what it must have felt like to be at the beginning of that, alone in the city, no one behind you, no margin for failure, knowing that what you could do with your hands was the only real asset you had. She thought about the moment that woman decided the cooking alone wasn't enough. The moment she went to whoever gave her the ritual, a native doctor almost certainly, and received what she received and gone home with it and made the decision to use it. What was she thinking in that moment? Had it felt like a solution, or had it felt like crossing something? Had there been hesitation, or had the hunger been so complete by then that hesitation wasn't available? Sandra didn't know. She would never know. Mammaresi was not a woman who explained her decisions. What she knew was what the camera had shown her. Not a woman in conflict, not a woman performing a ritual she felt troubled by,
A woman performing a ritual she had performed 1,000 times with the ease and certainty of someone who had long since stopped asking whether it was right and only been asking whether it was working. It had been working until tomorrow.
Saturday evening, 7:15 p.m. Risi restaurant on Owolowo Road, Ikoyi. Every table full. The room was doing what it always did on Saturday evenings, producing that particular atmosphere that good restaurants produce at their best. The feeling of being held by something warm, of having found the right place at the right time, of a city that could be brutal and exhausting somehow being, here, in this room, completely generous. The jollof rice smell was in everything, as it always was. Even before your food arrived, the smell preceded it. Rich, smoky, deep, layered in a way that made you sit differently in your chair, made you quieter, made the conversation at your table feel more important. Sandra moved through her section with her usual precision. She took orders, she delivered food, she smiled at the right moments. She looked, to anyone watching, exactly like what she had presented herself as for 3 weeks. A focused, competent floor staff member who was good at this job. Inside, she was absolutely still. At 7:32 p.m., she looked across the room and found her cousin at his table near the center. He caught her eye. She gave a single small nod. He lifted his phone and began to film. She walked to the center of the dining room. She stopped. She stood there for a moment, looking around the space slowly. At the 40 people eating, at the staff moving, at the kitchen visible through the glass panel where Mammaresi was at her station, as she always was during Saturday service, present and overseeing. Then Sandra raised her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need one moment of your attention, please." The room didn't stop immediately. It never does. But the tables nearest her paused. Heads turned. The ripples spread outward, and within a few seconds, the room had gone quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when something unexpected has punctured the atmosphere and everyone's instincts are telling them to pay attention. A waiter across the room froze. The restaurant manager, standing near the bar, took a step forward with a frown forming on his face, and Mammaresi, through the kitchen glass, looked up. Their eyes met. Something passed across Mammaresi's face. Recognition, not of Risi's face specifically, but of the situation. The specific, particular recognition of someone who has been running from a thing for a long time and can see, finally, that it has arrived. Her expression did not change significantly. Her jaw did not drop. She did not look away. She put down the spoon she was holding and she looked directly through the glass at Sandra and she waited. That was the most frightening thing, that she waited. "My name is Sandra Okafo," Sandra said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "I am an investigative journalist with Lagos Verified. For the past 3 weeks, I have been working in this restaurant undercover as part of an investigation into this business. I have something to tell you that you have a right to know." The restaurant manager was moving toward her now. She kept talking faster. "Every morning before this restaurant opens, the owner of this restaurant, the woman in that kitchen right now, performs a ritual over the cooking pot. She takes a piece of her own used underwear, a G-string, from a personal bag she brings to work every day. She holds it over the pot while she performs an incantation, and then she drops it into the pot." Absolute silence. The kind of silence that has weight. The food that you have eaten tonight, the jollof rice that is on your table right now, was cooked in a pot that had this woman's used G-string in it. I have this on camera. I have photographs of the underwear in her bag. Everything has already been submitted to Lagos Verified and is being published right now. She took out her phone. She held up the footage. One of the nearby tables leaned toward her phone screen, then another. The footage was clear. Mammaresi, the kitchen, the bag, the small red lace item, the pot. The room broke.
Not all at once. It went in stages like a structure failing. First, a woman at the table closest to Sandra made a sound that was not quite a scream and not quite a moan, but something between them, and pushed her plate away from her with both hands as if it had burned her. Then the man across from her was standing. Then another table, and another. A woman near the window covered her mouth. A man stared at his half-eaten plate of jollof rice with a expression that shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, disgust, a kind of devastated grief. A voice from the back said, "Is this a joke? Is this real?" The restaurant manager reached Sandra and grabbed her arm. "You need to leave right now. Let her go." The voice came from the kitchen. It came through the pass-through window, clear and completely calm, and every person in that room recognized the voice because it was the voice of the woman whose food they had been eating, whose name was above the door, whose hands were in the pot. The restaurant manager released Sandra's arm. Mammaresi came out from the kitchen. She walked through the room the way she always walked, upright, unhurried, taking up exactly the space she was entitled to and not apologizing for it. She walked until she was standing in the center of the dining room, equidistant from the kitchen door she had come from and the main entrance. She stood there and looked around at the room, at the abandoned plates, at the people standing, at the woman near the window who was wiping her eyes, at the man who had his phone out and was filming her face. She looked at Sandra last. "What you have said," Mammaresi said slowly and clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, "is true." The room erupted. Voices over voices over voices. A chair scraped violently. Someone was already on the phone. The woman near the window pressed her hands to her face. The man who had been filming said, "Oh my God," so quietly it was almost inaudible, and then said it again, louder. Mammaresi did not raise her voice. She did not move. She stood in the center of the chaos with a stillness that was somehow more disturbing than the chaos itself. When the noise had peaked and begun slightly to ebb, when people had run out of immediate reaction and were now waiting because something about her stillness demanded it, she spoke again. "I started this business with nothing. I came to this city alone. I cooked the best food I knew how to cook. And for 2 years, it was not enough. I was invisible." Her voice was even, almost conversational. "I went to someone who could help me. He gave me what I needed. I used it. It worked." She looked around the room slowly, meeting eyes. "I am not going to stand here and tell you I am sorry. I built everything in this room, every chair, every plate, every staff member who has a salary." Her gaze moved across the faces. "The food is real. What I cook is real food. What you ate tonight is real food. I have never poisoned anyone. I have never harmed anyone." A man near the bar said sharply, "You put your underwear in our food without telling us. You used juju to keep us coming back. You manipulated us." Mammaresi looked at him. "Yes," she said simply. No apology, no qualification, no breaking. She looked at Sandra, and for a long moment, the two women looked at each other across the center of the room, the journalist and the restaurateur, the exposure and the exposed, and Mammaresi's face carried no anger, no resentment, something closer she would write later, to recognition, the look of someone who had always known this day existed somewhere in the future and had simply decided to walk toward it rather than away from it. "You did your job," Mammaresi said to Sandra. Then she turned and walked back into her kitchen. The restaurant emptied in 11 minutes. Sandra stood in the center of the space and watched it happen. Customers leaving in clusters, some of them still on phones, some of them silent. Plates of food left half-eaten or untouched. A table near the back where a couple was celebrating something, an anniversary maybe. There was a small cake that one of the waitresses had brought out earlier, sat abandoned, the cake uncut, 2 glasses of wine untouched. The staff was standing in various stages of shock. One of the junior waitresses was crying quietly in the corridor. The restaurant manager was on his phone, voice low and urgent. The kitchen staff had come out and were standing together in a group near the kitchen door, looking at nothing in particular. Sandra sent the signal to Emeka. "It's done. Publish." Then she sat down nearest the table. She had been on her feet for 6 hours, and she looked at the room around her. Risi restaurant, 40 covers, exposed brick walls, warm lighting, the smell of jollof rice still in everything, still extraordinary, still the smell of something that had no right to be as good as it was. She thought about the fact that underneath everything, underneath the juju, underneath the ritual, underneath the G-string in the pot, the cooking was genuinely exceptional, that Mammaresi had real talent, that the food would have been remarkable even without the manipulation, that the woman might have built something extraordinary through her gift alone, if she had trusted it. She thought about the choice she had made instead. She didn't feel like writing that part of the story. It felt too complicated, too human, too much like sympathy for someone who had done something that deserved no sympathy. But she wrote it anyway, because it was true, and she had a rule about leaving true things out.
The story published at 9 p.m. that Saturday. By midnight, it had been shared 40,000 times. By Sunday morning, it was the most discussed topic in Nigerian Twitter, in every Lagos WhatsApp group, in barber shops and markets and offices. Food bloggers who had praised Risi issued careful statements. The lifestyle magazine that had put Mammaresi on its cover deleted the social media posts promoting the issue, then undeleted them, then deleted them again. The Pan-African food magazine that had featured the restaurant released a brief, mortified editor's note. NAFDAC announced an official investigation. Risi restaurant did not open Sunday morning, or Monday, or any day after that. The sign above the door, Risi, white letters on black, remained, but the doors were locked. The curtains that had never been drawn during operating hours were drawn. The social media pages went dark. Mammaresi herself was not seen in Ikoyi again. She was not arrested. The legal questions were complicated. Lawyers argued about which statute applied, and in the way of Nigerian regulatory response, nothing moved quickly. But she did not wait to find out. She was gone. Her staff received their final salaries in bank transfers on Sunday afternoon. No message, no explanation, just the transfers and then silence. Sandra's piece ran to 5,000 words. It was the longest thing Lagos Verified had ever published and the most read thing Lagos Verified had ever published. It was careful and thorough, and it followed every thread: the evidence, the context of spiritual practices in Nigerian food culture, the legal framework, the wider question of what the story said about the desperation that drove some people to do things they might not otherwise do. She wrote about the customers, she wrote about the staff, she wrote about what she had felt watching the evidence and choosing what to do with it. She did not write in that piece about the moment Mammaresi said, "You did your job." She saved that for a second piece, published 2 weeks later, about the ethics of undercover journalism and the human cost of exposure. It was a harder piece to write. It got a different kind of attention, quieter, more thoughtful. Some readers thanked her for it. Some said she was making excuses for a criminal. Some said it was the most honest journalism they had read in years. She read every comment, which was something she almost never did. 3 months later, Sandra received an anonymous message. It arrived via the Lagos Verified General inbox with no identifying information. The sender's details were routed through a VPN. Emeka flagged it because it was addressed specifically to Sandra by name. It was short. "You ended something I built. I do not forgive you for it, but I understand why you did what you did. I would have done the same. The food was real. Whatever else you think of me, know that. The food was always real. I am not finished." No signature. Sandra read it 3 times. Then she forwarded it to Emeka with a single comment. She's already planning the next one. She closed her laptop and sat back and looked at the ceiling of her small Surulere apartment. She thought about a woman arriving in Lagos alone with 1 bag and hunger so complete it had no flaw. She thought about the city that had received her and what the city required in return. She thought about the 100 ways that story could have ended and the one way it had. She thought about what "I am not finished" meant coming from a woman like that. She thought about the fact that she, Sandra Okafo, was also not finished. Then she opened a new document and she started looking for the next story. Because that is Lagos. It does not stop for anyone. Not for the woman who built an empire and lost it. Not for the journalist who took it down. Not for the customers who will eventually, despite everything, find a new restaurant, sit down, order jollof rice, and let themselves trust the smell again. The city is always cooking something. The only question is, what is in the pot? If this story made you think, like the video, share it, subscribe, and hit the notification button for updates on more interesting stories. Let others think too. And the next time a plate of food holds you in a way you cannot explain, pay attention. Pay very close attention.